45 years ago, China and the United States made a historic decision to establish diplomatic ties. Over the past decades, the relationship has gone through a roller coaster ride. A survey conducted by the Chicago Council on Global Affairs late last year found that nearly 60% of Americans view the development of China as a threat to U.S. national interests. That may have explained why leaders from both sides met in person last November in San Francisco, California, to try to stabilize this important relationship. As a result, starting from January the 1st this year, China has simplified visa applications for U.S. visitors and especially tourists, waiving the requirement for proof of air ticket booking and hotel reservation. What accounted for the prevailing negative views by so many Americans against China, and what role has the media played? How much change could result from the San Francisco summit? During a recent trip to the U.S., I talked to Stephen Orlins, president of the National Committee on U.S. China Relations. He shared with me his insights on the philosophy of policymaking between the two countries. Could you point to some of the concrete benefits that a good relationship have brought and can still bring to America? You know this by heart.
The most important is peace. You know, I'm old enough to remember when we had war in Asia, and China had war for decades and decades before the establishment of diplomatic relations. You know, hundreds of thousands of Americans and millions of Chinese died in those years. Guess what? Since we established diplomatic relations, we've had a peaceful Asia. Those are related. Economic prosperity, when the United States and China cooperate, it leads to better lives for both Chinese and American. It leads to better innovation. It leads to, you know, a life that is more full, that to the extent Chinese come to the United States, you know, the people-to-people exchanges create environments where both Americans and Chinese live better. They just, you know, the hundreds of thousands of Chinese students. Before 1979, basically there were no Chinese students in the United States. Think what they have contributed to America. And they have contributed inventions, they've contributed companies, they contributed innovation, they contributed to Americans understanding more of China. Now what we need is more Americans to be going to China.
Let me ask you this, why is the Biden administration so eager to stabilize U.S.-China relationship, whereas the Congress is not on his side on this issue, not heavily on his side, although there was a bipartisan Senate delegation to China led by Mr. Schumer. But why is President Biden so eager on improving this? Why is it important for him? Is it good for him domestically? Because it seems to be a consensus, a bipartisan consensus, that China is the rival.
It may or may not be good for him domestically, that the polling by the Chicago Council shows the American people are so negative. They also, in the poll, say that the U.S. government doesn't do enough to deal with China affecting America's national interest.
Yeah, why?
So he is taking, one might argue there could be a political risk, but he spent a lot of time on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He was very well prepared to be president from a foreign relations point of view. He sees what's going on in the world, and he concludes it's better to be talking to China about these issues and working with China than not. So if we can talk about getting peace in Ukraine, that's a good thing. If we can talk about getting peace between Israel and Hamas and having China's help in doing that, that's a good thing. If we can talk about dealing with AI together, that we don't allow AI to control our weapon systems, that we both agree there has to be a human being in the chain of AI. That's a good thing. These are all good things, and President Biden and his administration understands that, and I think President Xi, Wang Yi, and the Chinese administration understand that, so they see a benefit from getting together, even if we can't fully agree.
The Chinese has repeatedly said that we want a principle in the way how we deal with each other. We want mutual respect, we want peaceful coexistence, and we want cooperation and win-win. Do you think this is shared by the Biden administration?
I think the U.S. doesn't really think in those terms.
Why not?
It's just not, you know, U.S. is just a much more practical kind of foreign policy
Can they accept
expertise.
it, though? Can they accommodate it
Well,
if they don't
I mean,
agree?
the question is, what does it mean in practice? You know,
It means
what does
treat
what does
each
it
other
mean?
with-
What does it, you know, what does it mean in terms of China's South China Seas policy? What does it mean in terms of its economic policy? What does it mean in terms of BRI? What does it mean in terms of, you know, the issues that the U.S. has with respect to human rights? It doesn't. In other words, for an American, they're more interested in the practical outcome than they are in the principles.
Thank you so much for accepting our interview, Mr.
Great.
Orlins.
Great to see you.